discussion are. I mean, most of you have been here before, so you'll know this, but some of you haven't. So I'll explain it. So it's relatively simple. So we have a panel of 5 experts, and you can ask questions to the panel or to the audience or whatever about Haskell-related things, ideally, and we'll try to answer them. And you can answer questions by questions, and yeah, sure. I mean, in principle, you can ask questions as well. And so the rule is that I'm going, it's a very subjective thing. I'm going to decide whether you are not actually asking a question, but rather make a statement or voice an opinion. And if I decide that, I will promote you to the panel. And then we're just going to do this, I don't know, right to left. So Simon will rotate out first, and then and so on. So it'll just cycle through. And so if you want to be on the panel, it's very easy.
Let's make a statement. Haskell is crap.
If you want to get off the panel, you just have to make lots of provocative statements that will prompt other people to voice opinions. So it's going to usually work rather well. So yeah, so we have Simon, Jasper, Abby, Manuel, and Stephanie, and I think, yeah, except for Manuel, who's going to give his talk tomorrow, we've all been speakers today. But yeah, so Manuel is working for Twig, and is going to give a talk about graphics, I think, was it, right? Yeah, tomorrow. So yeah. All right. Yeah, and as a very first start, I wanted to allow Jasper to make sort of a short announcement.
So hi, everyone. So one of the things I help organize every year is the Google Summer of Code, or the Haskell.org Summer of Code, which is a program in which students get to work on various Haskell, open source Haskell projects for the summer and contribute that way. And so the announcement I want to make is, if you have any sort of good ideas of things that students can work on next year, please either get in touch with me during the event, or you can find our contact info on summer.haskell.org. And then maybe to kick off the discussion, so I think this Google Summer of Code thing is a great way to bring new people into the Haskell community. It's also how I first sort of really joined the Haskell community. So maybe I can ask the panel, what do you think there are more? What else can we do as Haskell community to sort of bring in more people and sort of get them contributing and basically get them interested in Haskell?
Okay, so who wants to make a start? Yes, over there.
It's on. I think one way to lower the barrier. Wait, is this answering Jasper's question or asking another question? Because I have both. Sorry. Okay. Well, so a question that I have is that I feel that a lot of the recent interest in Haskell has been driven by the blockchain and cryptocurrency, and I'm concerned that if something bad happens and the bubble bursts, or like then that would have negative effects on Haskell as a whole. Is that something that you think about, or is that a concern that you share, or do you not think it's an issue at all?
Pardon? Can I answer?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, okay. So yeah, through Twig, I'm working for IHK, so I'm part of the problem. Well, blockchains or blockchain development is very visible, and but there's a lot of other Haskell out there as well. Generally speaking, I mean, there's a lot of functional programming in financial computing, and of course, blockchains are part of financial computations or financially related software. But it's absolutely not the fact that, I mean, it's hard to quantify how many % of all professional Haskell development is related to blockchain companies, but I think it's the most visible thing at the moment, but that doesn't mean that it's actually such a huge percentage of the overall amount of Haskell development. And if you look around, I mean, just look at the sponsors of this event, Standard Chartered, also financial industry, huge Haskell team, nothing to do with blockchain, or I don't know, I mean, maybe some Standard Chartered people tell us. There are a lot of other companies which have been around for a long time, like Galois, quite big, does a lot of stuff, nothing to do even with, I think most of their things don't even have anything to do with financial computing. So I wouldn't be worried.
Does anyone else want to? Yeah?
So just two quick responses. The first is I have a personal stake in this because my son Michael has just started with IOHK. So he is now using GHC on a daily basis to do blockchain-y stuff. So I've handed over my eldest son to the... That's right. That's right. However, so it's also, I mean, I'm sure all of you know this. It took me a little bit of a while to absorb. There's a difference between Bitcoin and blockchain, right? So Bitcoin, I'm a bit worried about, right? Bitcoin consumes more energy than Austria. And that is terrifying. I'm a bit and for what end? So I'm a bit worried about Bitcoin. But fortunately, I checked with Michael very carefully and with Charles, right? So all these blockchain companies are doing more sort of proof of stake stuff. They're not consuming more energy than Austria. It's about distributed ledger. So I feel much more comfortable about that. And yes, it may all crash and burn, but as Manuel says, I think Haskell has a much bigger keel. It's just that's the bit that's poking above the surface of the ocean at the moment. So I'm not too worried.
Also, there's a lot of foundational work going on, for example, in IHK, kind of research work, papers, and so on. And whatever happens to the product, I mean, there is a lot of even scientific results coming out of all this work, and that's going to be useful in any case. So.
Yeah, I just want to echo that there's more to Haskell than blockchain. As part of my sabbatical, I've been visiting Galois over the summer. They are not doing blockchain at all. They do a lot of work in verification. And I think as people are becoming aware of the potential harm that security flaws can do, we need to have some solutions. And so companies like Galois are growing much faster than they ever have before. Another example that we haven't brought up, I think, is, and it's going to sound a little silly, but web programming, right? I think that has gotten people to the used to the idea that you don't just write everything in Java, that you can write significant applications in languages that kind of look functional. JavaScript and Ruby and Python kind of have laid the groundwork for a little bit, but as people get frustrated, I see them going toward PureScript and Elm, where they're looking for a better solution there, and that brings them to Haskell too.
Okay. Just very much in the back, or yeah, you already, yeah, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Is this on? Yes, it is. What can we do to make future sort of Haskell Exchange conferences like this with the audience much more gender balanced? Because I've sort of never been at a conference with, so many on one side.
Yeah, I have no idea. This is the first time I've been to Haskell Exchange. It's certainly, the balance is the worst I've seen it at the meetings that I go to. I go to ICFP, I go to academic conferences, I go to Strange Loop. We got to do something here, right? Strange Loop, I know, gets corporate sponsors to specifically have diversity grants to bring in people to the conference who would not otherwise go. Maybe that's an idea that Haskell Exchange can do. At academic conferences, we run mentoring workshops to help introduce people of all genders to the conference itself so that they can get the most out of it and feel welcome the minute they come in the door. Again, you know, it's something that's really important. It's not going to be an easy solution, but I think it's something worth trying.
So as a bit of background, I do help organise a series of workshops called Closure Bridge, which try to encourage underrepresented groups into the kind of functional programming community. Obviously, the part of that name is Closure, which is the dynamically typed functional programming language. The second part of that is Bridge, which is kind of what I want to emphasize, which is I think it's very easy for us to say, okay, well, we need to mentor women in particular if we're sticking to the gender or non-men, if we're sticking to the gender representation thing. Yeah, we need to mentor them and teach them how to code, teach them how to enter the industry by giving them skills. And whilst I think that's very important, I think it's a very easy assumption to make that the people that aren't currently represented in this room need teaching, which isn't necessarily the case. I think actually you'll find, I think sometimes when we talk about diversity and representation, we say there's a pipeline issue. There aren't enough women, or there aren't enough underrepresented groups, or there aren't enough non-men coming into these industries. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. It's just maybe after a few years, actually, they found the situation so hostile that they've been pushed out. So I won't go into the full background of that, but I suppose what I would say as a potential suggestion is, aside from, or as well as mentoring and teaching people skills, I think there are maybe a couple of other aspects of, a couple of other things that we can encourage. So I think there are 3 parts of mentoring-like activities that we can get involved in. Obviously, the mentorship is helping people to develop their career, help them make career decisions. I mentioned in my talk that I think there's a lot that we can learn from academia in terms of if there's someone that has a decade of experience on you, and you can learn from them and you're interested in the particular, for example, the research industry that they're specializing in, you can go ahead and ask them for help, or you can encourage people from underrepresented groups or make an introduction to have them develop their own skills and have that mentoring support. But I think aside from mentoring and kind of career development, there is also coaching, which is that key skill development. So it's teaching people the how and the why. I think we've got fantastic amount of mentoring support and a fantastic amount of coaching support. I think one thing that we often forget about when we have communities that are, I suppose, slightly homogenous is that actually there's a sponsorship aspect to it as well. It's all very well and good asking people to come and spend a day and learn Closure for free or Haskell for free, but this is a very privileged position to be in. Unfortunately, we can't all spend our days pretty much unpaid learning new skills. We have to make a living. So actually the sponsorship aspect of it, I think, is super important, which is if you do want to improve the inclusivity of your community or the representation, put your money where your mouth is, and support, I suppose, the grassroots organizations, support the Closure Bridge, support the other Bridge Foundry events, for example, that target other programming languages, support your code bar events and sponsor your events, and put funding and put resources behind encouraging people into those industries, which I think that's probably one of the main things that I see that's lacking.
I was very excited to see on Twitter recently that Lambda School, which is a kind of programming boot camp, is going to arrive in the UK. There are many good things to say about Lambda School. Unfortunately, despite the name, it doesn't actually teach any Haskell. Do you think there will be there's a space in the UK for a kind of programming boot camp type outfit that would teach Haskell? And do you think we're ready for that in the UK? Do you think that would be helpful in bringing more people into Haskell, perhaps including people from underrepresented groups?
Does anyone else want to answer first? So I think one thing that's really interesting, actually, that I don't have enough knowledge around to comment on completely, but I would say that I've noticed a little bit of a pattern in the programming community in general, which is around the kind of devaluation of skills that come out of boot camps. So you compare I'm struggling to think of really popular boot camp names now, but I think there's been a proliferation of boot camp type things, which I think have absolutely the right intention to heart, and I think are whose purpose is to improve the diversity of a particular programming community, and then it's almost for that same reason, the skills that come out of the people that come out of those boot camps are often devalued in terms of their skills because they're seen as not as academically rigorous as perhaps doing a master's in something, or going to university, or spending 2 or 3 years interning in an organization. Which again, I think maybe all three of those things, so the boot camp route, the education route, and the free learning route, are all quite are even, I think, can sometimes be inaccessible in themselves. I don't know the answer to making them more accessible, but I just think we have to be aware of, actually, when we ask someone to pay £10,000 to attend a boot camp, if we can offer them for free, are we offering them during the day when people might be wanting to work to pay the rent, or are we able to offer childcare to include people who are looking after children most of the time? How can we make these events as accessible as possible in terms of how much it costs to attend, how many people we're supporting, and how physically and how accessible they are, both in terms of people's physical accessibility needs and mental and well-being accessibility needs. Did that answer your question? I feel like I ranted a bit.
So I want to make a quick response that's a little different, it's an observation about the Haskell community as a whole. So Haskell is a little bit unusual in programming languages in that it lacks a corporate sponsor. So Rust has Mozilla, and Java has Oracle, and Swift has Apple, and so forth. So lacking a corporate sponsor is a great strength of the Haskell community, because it leaves us sort of, it's very grassroots-ish. At least I like to feel that. It's sort of driven from below. But it also means there's no central brain controlling anything that would say, should we run boot camps or things? And so I'd like to, so it's kind of both the strength and a weakness. So I say play to our strengths, and that means for here in the context of this particular conversation, that would mean don't set the bar too high. Just get on and do something, right? Roll up your sleeves, join up with some other people, and do something, whether by programming camps or, and you're not always going to get everything right, but just have a go, because nobody is going to have a go for you, right? There is no them, there is only us. That's my motto for Kaz, and it's a good motto for Haskell as well. So, Skills Matter has done a fantastic job by bringing us together for now 8 years, 7 years, really quite a long time. So that's a really helpful thing that Skills Matter has done. But we shouldn't leave it all to them, right? Just roll up our sleeves, get on with something. The Summer of Code is another great example of Haskell community acting together, even though we lack a central brain. So thank you for that. We should do more of those kind of things. So do stuff. Do stuff.
Okay. Yeah, all the way in the back.
In distressingly few statements from the floor.
Is the thing on? Hello. Are liquid Haskell and dependently typed Haskell competing approaches?
Liquid Haskell. You might want to repeat the question, but it was a bit interesting.
Okay, so this is a question of the relationship between dependent Haskell and liquid Haskell. And maybe Nikki will make a statement soon. But it is a question I get a lot, and probably Nikki gets a lot too. They share many of the same goals, which is you would like at compile time to have greater assurances about what your code does, right? Be able to write properties that express more than I get an int out, or this is something in the IO monad, right? Because you care more about what your code is. They have different approaches. Liquid Haskell is a tool. Dependent Haskell is a diverse collection of language extensions, which means that when you work with them differently. And I think there's some really nice papers by Nikki and maybe Joachim that kind of compare liquid Haskell to dependently typed programming, not in Haskell, but in other contexts too, which I think they lay out a really good explanation about how these different design choices lead to different styles of verification.
Let's give the microphone to Nikki. Where is she? Or you can also just come here.
You need a microphone.
I think I would agree. And like during Stephanie's keynote, I was thinking like, how can we combine these two? And this is something I think both me and I have discussed this a lot with Richard Eisenberg. How can we combine these things since we have the same goal? I definitely don't see it as competing. I think that in like some time, I hope that we will merge these two, but I don't think that yet we have found the right approach to merge these two. Like have some verification out there improving using like the syntax of dependent types and the automation of liquid Haskell. I think this is my goal, but
yeah. So this is much easier to explain from here.
oh, no. I'm done. I'm done. We are not competing. We will merge at some point, but we haven't found the time to merge it yet.
Yep, please.
I mean, I'll point out the fact that we have multiple approaches just underlies how important of a problem this is, right? It's a big design space, and the more I get into it, the more I realize it's a big design space. And so I find it exciting that I don't have to explore it only in one direction, that we do have other ways of looking at the same problem.
And it's interesting that like we have many ways to, and so it means that it's an important problem and people care about it, and it's, yeah, in the future we'll merge, I hope.
I also like the fact that there are two approaches. I mean, I don't really have a stake in either of them, but I've played extensively with both of them. And I kind of like that they, like each approach is better for some things. So it really kind of depends what you're doing at the moment and sort of which solution fits better with your problem.
Right. Yes, there.
Simon suggested in his talk that Haskell is going to get more and more complicated, powerful, and until nobody turns up.
That's already a statement.
Is that true? Do you think?
You can still get an answer, but
yes.
No, please,
Yes.
please come.
No. So actually one thing we talked about earlier on, like Simon and I in the break, it's actually like we've been with this for a while now, and it's quite interesting. I mean, at the time where things like monads and so on were introduced into the equation, there was this worry that these very mathematically inspired, strange concepts would be way too, is there academic, you really have to have a background in math, and otherwise there's no way you can write any programs, and it's way too complicated. And then fast forward to now, you have people who are not professional researchers, but just in air quotes, people, software developers who have a university degree maybe, or maybe not, often enough they're self-taught, and they will write blog posts about categorical concepts and recursion schemes and all kinds of things which usually would have thought, well, this is maybe the domain of a PhD student or a postdoc researcher. So I think as Haskell grows, the developers grow with the language, and things which used to be the domain of research suddenly become conversational topics for blog posts and Twitter. My take.
All right. Yeah.
So do all these extensions like dependent Haskell and liquid Haskell, do they really need to become part of GHC? Why can't they just keep on living as external tools, or maybe in these days we have plugins? Why can't they stay like that? Why do they need to become part of GHC, in your opinion? or not?
Is that a very leading question, isn't it?
So I can answer for Liquid Haskell that it is not a part of GHG, and it is just using comments, and it is very easy to develop and grow like independently. But people keep asking, like, when is Liquid Haskell going to be part of GHG? So I think like that all these are part of GHG because the Haskell users actually want to use all these parts.
Joachim?
Oh, no, I still want to answer, right? Because in terms of being a part of GHC, that is just such a fantastic opportunity as a language researcher. And I'm really kind of, maybe I'm only thinking of my own interests here, but I've learned so much by just watching how people use language extensions in ways that I would have never thought of. And if it weren't part of GHC, then I would not have that way of learning. I would not have that opportunity, that resource. And I think that's a really important thing for just what language research is.
How shall we balance backwards compatibility versus new features and progress and experimentation?
You have an opinion on this yourself?
We want both. we balance it by having both.
We are pro-cake and pro-eating.
Pro-cake and pro-eating. And I think this is really, this is one of the strengths of GLC, and has always been one of the strengths of GLC, to actually somehow get away with having this split personality.
Make a probably poorly informed disagreement. I wonder whether, as a community, I think, as Simon was saying, we don't have the benefit of having a sponsor or kind of a, when I say benefit, I don't mean benefit in a sense, but a benevolent dictator, as it were. So I think, I wonder whether, as a community, we would have to make those decisions about what matters, the trade-offs, and maybe what we value more as a community in terms of, do we want to start, I suppose, limiting availability of older versions and making things less backward compatible or less available to as many users in exchange for new features and moving faster? Or do we care more about robust and stable systems over the longer term?
As an engineer, I've always thought it'd be so nice if we had nice row types using the record syntax. Just get rid of the old records and put it in. But on the other hand, the furore that has happened in some areas with the 8.6 bug, yeah, has sort of made me believe now that there really is it really is important in order to get people involved in Haskell to have great backwards compatibility and stability and stuff. I've seen this has shown me a new facet of what people want.
Also, I mean, one thing that's always been, is always a critical resource is teaching, learning material, all these things. And by deprecating existing broadly used features, you very quickly outdate a lot of that material, of which we already have too little. So that's another danger.
There must be more people who have an opinion on this.
Yeah, please. He's uncomfortable.
Nobody? Oh, well, yeah.
I don't have an opinion on this. It was another question. It's about language extensions. Actually, it's almost a joke now at the beginning of talks to show the long list of language extensions we have. And there's discussion about making some of these extensions default. My question is going on the other side. I find them wonderful in order to know what's going on in the file. And I would like to know if it would be possible to add more extensions.
You find them wonderful, right?
Oh, damn it.
That was definitely a statement.
Yeah, it's still a question, actually. And my question is, would it be Would it be possible to use these extensions as a documentation and introduce new extensions which are purposed to document what the file is going to use?
My opinion on this, I don't get what the big deal is by having loads of language extensions. I mean, you do imports, right? What's the difference?
So, yeah, I mean, okay, yeah. Yeah, it's, I think this seems to have sparked an, okay.
So I think...
No.
So I think the difference is, if you open a module by somebody else, you don't want to learn a new language in order to read it, right? So if you're unfamiliar with whatever language extension, like, I don't know, you see @ and then a string in some module, you'll have to learn about... Hmm? Yeah, let's not use lens as a... No, but I think in general, I just want to open a file and see Haskell, right? So when I have to parse like 15 language extensions and then figure out, oh, this has data kinds enabled. But what does that do? And oh, look at this fancy syntax down there. Why are there bangs in my patterns, right? And then you have to Google bang and Haskell, and Google's going to say, bang, I don't know that. And you go on IRC, and then, oh, it's just it splits the language into individual pieces.
So you're saying the problem is not the language. It's not working. Is this on? Okay, here. So you say the problem is not the language extensions, but the fact that people are using them.
Yeah, okay.
One of the things I've noticed running through today that I haven't seen in previous years is a lot of compiler plugins.
I still don't know where you are.
Oh, sorry.
There. Oh, yes, but,
Like, so
you've noticed something, so that's already enough.
That was just prefixing my question. So, yeah, compiler plugins seem to be everywhere. Why are they the new hotness? Something happened in the past year that everyone's writing compiler plugins suddenly? Because I haven't noticed this in previous years. And that was a question.
We need some real experts.
So it's a fantastic situation. If there is nobody up here who thinks he can answer, then we need to look for an answer from the audience.
I mean, I can voice my opinion on anything.
Alan, perhaps?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about the proliferation of compiler plugins. I'm just going to voice a concern as someone involved in tooling. As someone involved in tooling, I'm very, very worried about all these plugins because you don't know what they're going to do. You can't kind of build for them. You make a tool and the users are going to install some plugin that's going to do something, and it's probably going to break whatever your tool does. And that's my concern about plugins, especially the source plugins that have become a feature now.
Everybody is over.
I was wondering, when people say Haskell and when people say GHC, they seem to use these terms interchangeably. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I have found when I first started 2 years ago, it meant something, because you still saw hugs mentioned every now and again. But now it's just irrelevant. It's the same thing. So I don't think it matters.
I feel it's definitely a good thing that we have GHC, and
That wasn't in dispute.
I don't know whether we should forget about that Haskell stuff or not, but I feel that it's great that GHC is not stopping at the Haskell 2010 and that we're still introducing new stuff. And I wouldn't want, I would like to have a subset of Haskell which is simple and I can give to newcomers and they won't be afraid, but I wouldn't want Haskell to stop trying new stuff.
So I have a question. Is there a future for Haskell in data science? So a couple of us in the room have been working on building data science infrastructure in Haskell. So there's Marco from the Data Haskell community and various other people. But it really doesn't seem to have taken off. So at least not on a big scale. Is this something that is a good fit for Haskell? Or are we forever stuck with Python and R?
Is that an answer to the question? Yeah, and you can answer it from up here immediately. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for the question. I happen to be one of the surviving editors for datahaskell.org, so this is why I picked up. So apparently there's a huge interest of newcomers on this domain. But we have very few answers for them. So they come in our Gitter chat room asking, how do I do X in Haskell? And we're very much stumped. So we are kind of victims of this huge fragmentation in the package landscape, I think. There are many partial solutions which are mutually incompatible, or at least nobody has published a complete workflow for solving these issues. Data science itself is a huge field and entails many different pieces of software. So nailing that in a very tiny community is a big problem in its own right. The initial steps we've taken to tackle this was a knowledge base, which, well, does exist, but contains only partial answers, right? So very well-known packages, and certainly not something that you would call advanced analytics. But hey, it's growing, and we're an open source group. And in the years, I mean, Data Haskell started in 2016, and we have this chat room, and there are by now a few hundred unique users. I would say around 400. Though like 20 or 30 of them appear on an average month, and new ones come in every so often. But the answer remains the same. So we don't have enough momentum, and I would like to connect to related questions on how to maintain momentum in an open source community without having a strong sponsorship from industry and essentially zero funds apart from our Sundays and Saturdays. So I open this question to all of you in case you have partial answers for this. Sorry for the rant.
If I can just add something about momentum. In my experience, if you can put some sort of a solution out that does some part of the problem and can demonstrate that it works and call for help, then people will normally dive in and help. You're more likely to get help for something that's partly working than just for an idea. So, you know, perhaps kind of showcasing what examples there are. I do know there are companies out there that are doing like serious data work with Haskell. I think HaskellWorks is one of them. I think Awake Networks is another one, based on the blog posts and packages that are coming out. So perhaps we just need to kind of make it apparent what things are out there and what they're being used for.
Can you say again where this Data Haskell community lives? Or
Yes, so it lives in a few places. On GitHub, Data Haskell, on Gitter, which is it's a chat system. You can log in with your GitHub account, and we have a mailing list on Haskell.org, which Alan opened for us. And where else?
So this actually leads me to a slightly tangential question, because back in the very old days, I'm getting old, when I started with Haskell, there was a Haskell mailing list, right? And that was it. And then at some point there was an IRC channel, and then, I don't know, many years passed, and now there is Reddit, and there is Gitter, and there is Slack, and there is probably 5 other tools. There are people who seem to exclusively communicate via Twitter. I mean, that's good, right? Everybody should use the medium that they feel most comfortable with. But if I wanted to reach the Haskell community, if there even is such a thing, what should I do these days? And if I wanted to know what there is, like, I mean, if I want to know, is there a project on? Yeah, that's fine. I mean, where should I go, right? I mean, do you have any input on it? No, that's probably a fair statement, although it is a statement. Yeah, that's good.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so there is no one Haskell community. I think that's a great thing. I think, like, there's parts of Haskell that I love, and there's parts of Haskell that I don't love. And I guess your answer, like, the answer to your question is figure out which part of the Haskell community, like, you're most interested in reaching. And
well, if I want to reach as many as possible, what is the most cost-effective way of achieving that?
Just all of them. I mean, it's not really.
Yeah, but I don't even know, right? I mean, it's a question of discoverability.
Well,
I mean,
I reckon.
So should we make, like, I mean, is there a sense in sort of consolidating efforts of, like, collecting lists of places where people hang out and talk about things, and where would these have to be placed so that they would actually be looked at and found? So it's.
I mean, I personally use, like, Twitter and Reddit a lot. So.
There is a list on the Haskell.org homepage, right?
Is that complete? Does that list the data Haskell stuff?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Here's a real off-the-wall suggestion. A compiler plugin for GHC that gets a message of the day.
Okay, sorry. Just to butt in and answer the last one. I think there's, like, actually just no way to actually consolidate people. And in PureScript, we actually have already.
Yeah. You qualify.
But yeah, so the problem is that in PureScript, we already have tried to, like, consolidate everything and said on IRC, like, hey, we have all the discussion on Slack now, and hey, we don't, like, talk about everything on Reddit anymore. Like, we have our PureScript for people to post random stuff that they want, but we're going to talk about things on Discourse now, but, nothing ever works, and people just use whatever tool they want. So I think we just have to deal with it, that if you don't have some kind of corporate sponsor that just says to users, like, screw you, this is how we're doing things, you're always going to have fragmented communication. And well, that's just how the internet works. Maybe too confrontational. I don't know.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
I wanted to voice my opinion on the data science question.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
go on. Welcome.
So I think the reason why data science isn't as great as in Python and Haskell is the same why data science isn't as great in other languages, really. And I think that if you want to have a great data science community doing stuff, then what you need is NumPy and SciPy implemented. And if you want that happens, then somebody has to go and implement NumPy and SciPy. And right now our status is, oh yeah, maybe you can use this matrix library and then you get 10% of NumPy and good luck with the rest. And with SciPy, it's like, okay, here are 100 algorithms. Here's one package that does one, but it has one author, hasn't been updated for 2 years, and nobody's using it. So I think that if we want to solve this, then somebody or a group of people need to team up and say, okay, now we implement the entire functionality of NumPy and SciPy together. We just say, okay, this is the scope. We implement it now, and at some point it's going to be done. And for this, I also would recommend that we don't say, okay, let's see whatever fancy Haskell features we can use to get it done, because it becomes more difficult. I would say, let's just start with the same functionality so you can apply the same ideas. So if you find some tutorials on the internet to do whatever data science task, and you can say, okay, you multiply these matrices, you do these operations, that you can do the same thing in Haskell just as easily. And then maybe later we can sprinkle some extra type stuff in to make it better in some way. But I think first you just need to have these basic things and build them.
Couldn't we just make bindings for them rather than re-implement them?
I think you could probably do it. I think with some of the existing calling Python from Haskell stuff, you can do it as well. But if you do it in an entirely untyped fashion, like for example, you lose the information whether a matrix has doubles or ints in and so on, things get very unergonomic. And at any given point when you want to extract something, you're just, oh, what's in here, right? So I think that is too little delivered. But I think it also shouldn't be too much.
And we have something like accelerate, parallel strategies, which are simply too cool to give up. So this is why I would like to go for a fully native. Simon, I'm also talking to you. Data parallel Haskell, anybody? So these things are too cool to yield to binding packages. Do you remember data parallel Haskell?
Given the Cambrian explosion of Haskell family languages and the recent interest in Bitcoin, I just have like job preparation question or interview preparation question, which is like, what is the next killer application? If not data Haskell, then what? I mean, besides blockchain, I know.
Where was the question? Sorry, where?
Like, what is the next killer application? If not data Haskell, then what would it be?
It's clearly machine learning and IoT.
Spicy take.
Laziness is supposed to be a feature to connect or to compose functions that don't require to allocate whole intermediate data structures. But on the other hand, laziness, by its very nature, doesn't allow the compiler to check that whole data structures are not allocated and keep the memory footprint small. So the question is, why is laziness? When is laziness a good idea? Which use cases would ask for laziness?
My most basic use case is like using alt ever. If you've ever tried PureScript and use alt, like you know the answer to the question. Like, it's actually quite painful to write parsers in PureScript.
Oh yeah, well I have a microphone myself. Sorry. So it's laziness is often easy to dismiss if you actually are in a language that is lazy, right? So we are in a blessed situation, and we have a lazy language, and of course we are getting annoyed by it when it doesn't do what we want. But I think in my opinion, the strongest point for laziness is that it actually allows true compositionality, and so we can take apart things and write them as pipelines, and even without having very fancy advanced optimizations, we get something which is at least in the ballpark of complexity which you would want. Whereas if you are in an Eagle language and you like write a chain of compositions of functions, you'll get all the intermediate data structures forced completely, and you need either to apply fancy fusion techniques or some other stuff, or what many people in those languages actually do. They do this as a means of developing the program, but then once they know this is the program they want, they will rewrite it all as a single monolithic loop. And yeah, I mean, so I think I'm also angry about laziness every once in a while, but I think like if you talk to people who are programming OCaml or ML or something, many of them are actually also going to say, I wish the language was lazy. So I think it goes, but the grass is always greener elsewhere. So I think we have a certain amount of advantages, and I wouldn't want to give them up. I mean, despite the fact that it is certainly a balancing thing. Yeah, yeah.
Maybe one. Do you also want to answer this?
After you.
Okay. So there are a couple of places on the internet, a couple of articles that explain this a little bit better than I can. But a standard answer and like concrete example for what you just said in terms of compositionality is that you can always turn something that has some laziness somewhere inside into a strict equivalent by just, well, evaluating it. But it is much harder to turn something that is strict already into a lazy version. And you see that, for example, if you have Scala, right, where it's strict by default, but you can manually make stuff lazy. And they're like, oh, I would like if this field of this struct was lazy now, right? So if that thing is in a library, you can't do that. You have to go there, you change the code. Then you're like, I want that other thing is also. So you keep doing this. You have to go and change the other programs, the other source code, which is not yours, in order to achieve your goal. With laziness, you can always turn something that is lazy into a strict variant. You can do it from your code, not from the library code you have to change.
Okay. Is there one final question, or?
Yeah, can everyone hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's somewhat related. A question to everyone. What's your favorite language that is as far away from Haskell as possible? So ideally not functional, like.
For me, it's Tech, actually.
I was going to say Nix, but that's functional. So.
Perl?
Bash.
Yeah, I think it's a nice way to end the discussion. So yeah, you can over I think pizza, or what are we having, or more beer, we can have more discussions about our favorite non-Haskell languages. Thank you all so much.